After what feels like an unusually long winter, Formula 1 pre-season testing is finally upon us. Only 3 days of running are permitted this season in Bahrain, so every team has already hit the track to rack up some vital shakedown mileage. But from Thursday through to Saturday, things will start to get serious, and here are some of the key things we'll be looking for. Will the Mercedes work? It'll be interesting to see if any teams have pushed their solutions far enough to trigger some bouncing problems, or if the floor rule changes over the winter have stamped it out entirely. But this is particularly relevant for Mercedes. The strengths and weaknesses of the W14 will go beyond a simple is it bobbing up and down on the straights. But given Mercedes appears to have stuck to its guns on car concept, most notably the side pods, if the new car appears to share some of its predecessor's more troublesome traits, there are going to be questions asked. There's already a feeling after the winter that Mercedes might not have quite made the gains it was hoping for and could start the season on the back foot. So we'll be on the lookout for any outward signs that prove or disprove that notion. What's the RB19 like? After making a mockery of launch season by supposedly unveiling the RB19 2.5 weeks ago, it's time to meet the real thing, not a show car in 2023 clothing. We aren't the only ones who will be keen for a look at the RB19. The competition will also be pining to scope out how last year's benchmark team has evolved its title-winning car. This time last year, Red Bull introduced a late bodywork upgrade at the second test in Bahrain. Given it's just a single 3-day test this year, chances are the car that breaks cover will be extremely close to what will race next week. As so many cars have shifted towards a Red Bull style design, it will be fascinating to see if the RB19 moves the goalposts. And we'll have a full technical analysis of the car here on our channel on day 1 of the test. What have teams been hiding? It's not just Red Bull that has been playing games in the off-season. Prior to the Bahrain test, F1 teams control what the outside world sees of their cars. Even when photos of the cars are released, they are carefully selected to shroud any details that teams want to keep hidden. And there will also be parts that are only added to the cars in Bahrain. While teams will do their best to keep things under wraps during testing, it's impossible to do that entirely. The cars are fully exposed when out on track or driving down the pit lane, and it's not only media outlets like us who have photographers poised to capture the secret details, but also every other team does the same. The 3 days in Bahrain will be the first time to see the real 2023 F1 cars, and their secrets will gradually become clearer to the world. That's what makes pre-season testing so fascinating. Is Ferrari's engine advantage back? It was in Bahrain last year that the effectiveness of Ferrari's unique small turbo, long inlet power unit became apparent. The car's acceleration out of the slow turns was eye-opening, and something which would go on to be a bit of a theme in the early races. The Red Bull would be quicker at the end of the straights, but the Ferrari would accelerate harder onto them. The tighter the track, the better it was for the Ferrari engine. After a third of the season, Ferrari turned the engines down to prevent a repeat of the MGU-H-induced failures suffered in Barcelona and Baku, and because the fix was not a quick one, we never saw the early season acceleration advantage again. But Ferrari is hopeful that with the reliability fix in place, it can revert to running the engine hard once more this year. And the Sakir circuit is one of the more power-rewarding tracks on the calendar, so even if the engine is turned down or Ferrari's performance is disguised, we should get some interesting indications. Will Aston Martin make a big leap? At this time of year, there are always rumours between the teams about what the wind tunnel numbers are saying. They are of course to be treated with a large pinch of salt. But one recurring rumour of the last few weeks is that the new Aston Martin AMR23's numbers are very good. And we're not just talking good by midfield team standards, but really good. Maybe it's too good to be true, but occasionally those rumours are accurate. Think of the 2009 Brawn. If Aston Martin really has delivered a competitive car, Fernando Alonso might finally have moved to the right team at the right time. Bahrain could give us a first read on that. Is the Williams passing its big test? Williams had the slowest car in F1, even though it was at least able to compete in the lower midfield, but it's hoping to make a decent step in 2023. To do that, the car needs to have better through-corner balance, and combination corner entries, featuring turning and braking at the same time, exposed just how bad this was last year. The problem was visible in pre-season testing. The Williams regularly arrived on the scene, locking up and running wide at the trickiest sequence, which is the double left, in which the track crests at turn 9, then dips into the ever-tightening turn 10. Alex Albon actually said at the team's launch event earlier this month that this very corner will indicate whether Williams has made the progress he thinks it has with this car. Will there be enough running? If even Fernando Alonso, the most experienced F1 driver of all time, is complaining about the lack of pre-season running, how tough must it be for the rookies? There are just 3 days of pre-season testing this year, which means a day and a half for each race driver. For rookies, Oscar Piastri, Logan Sargent and Nick De Vries, that's not much time at all. Even for the experienced drivers who have moved, Alonso, Pierre Gasly and the returning Nico Hülkenberg, it's a big ask. The last time there were just 3 days of testing was in 2021 when teams were running carryover cars. The most distance back then that anyone managed was Gasly's 1,282 kilometres. The unfortunate ones managed far less than that, with Aston Martin newcomer Sebastian Vettel managing only 633 kilometres. Even with a clean day and a half, that's not much time given the fact the testing programme is about far more than just the driver acclimatising. So if any team has reliability problems, it could put a driver on the back foot early in the season. Has a key 2023 development worked? The balance of last year's new Pirelli tyres for the switch to 18-inch wheel rims were a little understeery. That was exacerbated by the struggle to achieve front-end aero load under the new regulations. This year's tyres have been modified to reduce that understeer by improving the footprint of the front tyres. Pirelli has been careful not to go too far with this. The fear is that changing the balance too profoundly could lead to an inherent oversteer balance from the tyres. The final specification, construction and compounds were used in the post-season test in Abu Dhabi and yielded a mixture of gently positive or nonplussed reactions from the drivers. Now the new tyres are on the new cars, the Bahrain test should give a clear idea of their inherent behaviour and how well Pirelli has hit its mark. The first signs of the pecking order. We can just see the comments now. Every year it's the same thing, and we always stress there are plenty of caveats applied. No knowledge of fuel loads or engine modes, different tyre compounds, drivers pushing to different degrees, the list is extensive. However, by the end of testing, there is always at least a vague outline of the order, and at the very least it's usually obvious who is in particularly bad shape. The fun thing here is that as there are only 3 days, the picture might become clearer in some ways, but of course less clear in others. Teams can't afford to mess around with their run plans. They have to get down to business straight away, but they will be prioritising different things as there is simply not enough time to get through everything. Some will do full race simulations, some might break them up. Some might empty the tank to get a real qualifying simulation at the end of day 2 or 3, some might keep 20 or 30 kilograms in reserve. We will inevitably be working with best guesstimations, but at the very least the first signs of the pecking order will emerge. And before you all rush to tell us that it's a fool's game to even bother trying to crunch the numbers in testing, don't worry, we know that too. But it's fun to do, and it's still interesting, even if it's inevitably not going to produce an exact prediction of the final championship table. Is the field going to be closer? One of the stated aims of the technical regulations introduced last year was to close up the field. The FIA's single-seater technical boss, Nicolas Tombazis, felt that last year, in terms of being the first year of the regulations, the gaps were very low. The expectation is that the gaps will close up in the coming years, and the Bahrain test will be our first tentative indication of whether that will happen in 2023. For reference, across last year, the gap from first to last was 2.6% on average, with the midfield 1.35% off the pace. At the Bahrain GP weekend, the gaps were similar, although the midfield was a little closer, just 1% down. During the Bahrain test specifically, the gap from the fastest, Red Bull, to the slowest, Williams, was 3.65%. There's also the first opportunity to assess the pace impact of the rules tweaks this year, primarily the raising of the floor edges by 15mm and raising of the diffuser throat. Those are the main things we'll be looking for during testing. We'll have plenty of videos covering the big stories from the test, starting with what the real Red Bull looks like. And to make sure you don't miss a thing, head to our website, therace.com, to follow along with the Race Live Hub, where you'll get up-to-the-minute insight from our team on the ground in Bahrain.